2 minutes late. Technical difficulties. I wanted to do kind of like a tutorial and draw a few things to illustrate, but can't get the iPad to work, unfortunately. But anyway, I appreciate that you're here. Thank you for joining in. So I'm a little bit late on this, if I'm completely honest. Um, so much going on, but I thought I would take some time to talk about the potential cap being mooted for ISAs at £100,000. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of a background on ISAs because I think that's important. I speak a lot about ISAs here on the channel, to the point that I say that one of the first things that you learn as a financial advisor is tax efficiency first. And let me just prefix everything that I'm going to say in this video by just stating the obvious and stating my qualification. I'm a qualified financial advisor. So when I do talk about this, I'm talking about it from a financial planning point of view. And we're going to delve into the report which has led to this. And maybe I'm going to offer a couple of points I think worthwhile us considering right now. This is only just a suggestion. So ISAs were basically brought around to encourage people saving. They were introduced back in 1999, right? So we've had a long tradition of having this tax-free allowance that you can put money into every single tax year between April the 6th and April the 5th, where it's completely free from income tax, capital gains tax, dividends tax. It's been a gift to a lot of people who have just wanting to save or first-time investors specifically. We're now at this stage where we haven't seen the ISA allowance increase for a good number of years. And let me just share this little screen with you here. So this is the historic ISA allowance across the years. So back in the day, your ISA allowance used to be £10,000, but you used to have a set allowance for your cash and a set allowance for your stocks and shares. And you can see that that was the same for a good amount of time, all the way up until 2006, 2007, actually 2007, 2008. Then they slightly started to increase. Then all of a sudden, as you get closer to here, 2017, 2018, you could then decide how you wanted to put money into an ISA. You could split it equally across a cash and a stocks and shares ISA, and use them as you please. And we've seen that the ISA allowance hasn't really changed since 2017, 2018, really. You have some inclusions here for junior ISA and lifetime ISA that also came in a little bit later on. So that's the historic kind of like backdrop of ISAs. They've been something that have been a really, really important tool from a tax planning point of view for people who are either saving or investing, with the fact that whatever amount that you get as a return, as an interest rate or an investment return, is completely free from tax. Now, what is being mooted at the moment is for the government to basically cap ISAs at £100,000. Now, here is the reason why. The policy could help raise around £1 billion a year by the end of 2023. Really, really important with this, guys. We'll talk a little bit more about this because of the tax take and the tax side of this, because essentially this is a tax grab, and this won't go down well with a lot of people. It certainly isn't going to be something that is going to be popular amongst people who are investing right now. But I do want to go through the report, because the report reading through it is a little annoying, and it's I wonder who wrote the report, because the language that is used in there, I think, is a little misleading. And I think I don't want to say this as a broad statement, but it feels as though that the people that came up with this report are people that don't necessarily fully understand the demographic of the country. Yes, we have a lot of stats around household incomes, and we have a lot of stats around the savings rate, which we'll talk about in a moment. But there seems to be this assumption that everyone who uses an ISA or contributes into an ISA is of high income or from a wealthy background. And we know that that isn't true. I would ask you guys here watching this live or watching this on a replay, how many of you would say are you in the middle bracket, of incomes here in the UK, or are you in the top 10%? And by the way, to be in the top 10%, you only need to be earning around about £56,000. The average wage in the UK is about £33,000 is the average wage in the UK. So would you say you are on average wage, or would you say you're at that top 10%, 50K, 56K, 60K plus? Where are you? Let me know in the comments because I would love to know, because this report, it feels as though they automatically assume that everyone who pays into an ISA is in that top 10% and beyond. There's a lot of reference to lower incomes here, and there is an issue. There 100% is an issue. But let's have a look at the report very, very quickly, because I think it is quite telling when we start getting stuck into some of the statements that have been said here. So this is one statement I do want to read out here. In 2019-20, there were 27 million adult ISA holders in the UK. It is largely higher income people that benefit the most from ISAs, as they tend to have larger pots of such savings. Now, that will be true. Through my years as a financial advisor, I have most definitely met couples who have amassed quite a lot of money into their ISAs. That's by discipline, and because they had the assets, the income to be able to do so. And this report talks a little bit about the fact that it seems to be skewed. It goes on to say here that the problem is not just who benefits from ISAs, but also who does not. People who are young, women, those from ethnic minority backgrounds, and those living outside the south of England, all characteristics associated with low incomes and wealth levels, are less likely to benefit from the tax-free savings support provided by ISAs. So there are clear questions over the efficacy of ISAs in encouraging broader levels of savings when the ISA annual savings allowance was raised significantly in 2014. There was a significant inflow into ISAs, but no discernible impact on the total stocks of savings, consistent with the idea that much of the flow into ISAs would have otherwise gone into other savings products and so being subject to tax. So what they're basically saying there is that when the ISA levels limits, the allowance was raised in 2014, basically what they're saying is that there was a lot more money that went into these that would have otherwise been taxed. And I think it's important for us to bear in mind, this is all about tax. This is fundamentally what this is about. It is about tax. It also goes on to say here, and actually I need to show you this graph, because this is a graph of how we as a country in the UK, our savings rate. So this is the rest of the G7 countries, right? Really, really high savings rate. So the highest, and it doesn't designate the country specifically, but one other company in the G7 has a savings rate of, what's that? Probably 22%. Look at where we are. This is in the 1980s, by the way, right? So we're just under 5% here. And to be honest, we've not grown our savings rate much higher in the last 20 years. And if you think about it, that is absolutely shameful. Yes, there was this period right here where G7 companies, countries at some point, they dipped a little bit below us, below the zero. But look at our rate in that red line. The simple fact is, as a country, and this leads to a wider conversation, which is obviously the bit that I'm really passionate about here on this channel. As a nation, we have an issue with saving. And one of the things, again, this ties really beautifully into my book, because I talk about one of the financial habits that you need to be able to develop early is a savings habit. And savings isn't necessarily enough to make you wealthy, but it is the building block to actually get you there. We already know that 1 in 4 people have less than £100 in an emergency fund. We know 1 in 6 people have no savings whatsoever. Just take that in for a moment. 1 in 4 don't have £100 or less in an emergency fund. 1 in 6 have no savings at all. And you have to ask the question why that is. Lack of education. We are in a system where the financial education, the education system does not equip us with the know-how, the knowledge, the basic understanding of the things that we need to understand when it comes to money and how we interface with money. We just don't get it in school. And because we are in this Western economy where debt has been historically cheap, and now is a very, very nice example of how this transpires and relates to the real world, we have people we have a society that is consumerist. We have a society that is too bothered about the shiny things than thinking about money in a pragmatic way, building emergency funds, had actually having financial security. The way we interface with money as a nation is completely and utterly wrong. And whilst this report does talk a lot about the divide, and in a part of this, it talks about the fact that this benefits wealthy people, high income people. And again, please let me know in the comments if you consider yourself being in a high income, 50K plus, or whether you're on average wage or if you're on low incomes. But there seems to be this merge of the classes, right? That people in middle incomes, even people on average wages, and I know because I do coaching with people on average wages who are still utilizing their ISAs, but there seems to be this, I guess, assumption, and it won't be completely unfounded, that there's a lot of wealthy people putting money into ISAs. Now, the proposal is to cap it at £100,000. Now, let's think about this from a logical point of view, and this is where I was going to bring in the iPad and do some drawing for you, but it's not working. If you were to be lucky enough to have £20,000 to put into an ISA, it would take you 5 years to be able to cap that out. Now, £100,000 is still a very healthy limit to have within your ISAs before you start getting taxed on any residuals over this. But there is one key thing, and again, this is all about a tax grab, and this is where it's really come to roost for the government, because when they introduce these kind of things, clearly they're making decisions and making choices at the time, and they try to make the best decision at the time, not knowing what's going to happen in the future. And I just need to find this graph, because it is quite interesting when we talk about ISAs and financial planning. Let me just show you this. So one of the things that I always say to you guys is, the first rule of financial planning is tax efficiency, and the fact that if you have money in ISAs, what you're able to do is you're able to then use that in retirement to supplement your income, and the income that you generate from that will essentially be tax-free. Now, this is essentially what they're looking at here, right? And this is the impact of, savings, including ISAs, used to support consumption during retirement. Now, if you're retired, this is the graph. Look at that. Look at that increase. There's a lot more money being supplemented, being used in ISAs when people retire, which is free of tax. And the government simply cannot have this, based on where we are right now, with a cost of living crisis, with the fact that the government needs to find as much cash as possible. Now, with the historic savings rates, the amount of money that's been put into ISAs since 1999, like I have met some very, very very, very lucky clients when I was advising who have hundreds of thousands of pounds in ISAs. And, well, is it their fault? I don't believe it's their fault. They've been disciplined enough to be able to build this up. But what we basically do, and this, again, I wish this iPad was working, because I would show you how we would actually cash flow this, right? So if you're saying, you needed £25,000 a year in income in retirement, just as an example, we already know that the current personal allowance at the minute is 12,570. Well, what you would do is, you can take ISA income completely tax-free. And that's what most people do. So they will use their ISAs to generate an income. It won't touch their personal allowance of 12,570. Then take money from a general investment account or other investments up to the 12,550. And all of a sudden, you find yourself manipulating the tax system, being as tax efficient as possible when it comes to drawing income in retirement. Now, what's going to be happening is you'll be finding a lot of people retiring, even now and in the coming few years, in the future, where you have got a lot of people with a lot of money in ISAs that cannot be taxed. Now, the question is the government going to introduce this? This is just a suggestion at this point in time by this think tank. I don't know the answer to that. Will they retrospectively change the rules and the laws? I doubt very, very much. But there is one thing that I think is really important for us to acknowledge. The government is in a bit of a bind at the moment. We are in a state. We've got a recession looming. We've got news of property prices crashing, property market crashing. We're fighting high inflation. Interest rates are going up. Unemployment is set to pretty much go to 5% by the end of 2023, 5.6% by the middle of 2024. We are in a state as a country, and the government needs to raise taxes. So on that basis, you would assume that they would simply just change this legislation come March 15th. So March 15th is the next budget. All eyes on that day. Is that something that Jeremy Hunt will really will he introduce this? Will he take this seriously and have a look at it? There is no doubt in my mind that when you look at the stats and when he realizes, let me just bring this up again. When he realizes the size of the pie that is available, £1 billion in taxes every year, and 1 billion by the end of 2023, this will be extremely attractive a policy to introduce. 100%. Will he do it? I don't know. This is where we start getting into political conversations, right? Will the Tories have the gumption to do this? Would they be putting a nail in their own coffin if they did this? Do they kick it down the can for Labour to do? Would Labour actually do this? I don't know. But one thing that I guess we do know is that we have to take charge of the situation that we face ourselves in. And so if you are in the position where you can max out your ISA and your ISA allowance, you better get to doing that now, because if you don't use it, you are going to lose it. And if you are in the extremely lucky position where you have over £100,000 or you have the ability to get over that £100,000 limit in an ISA, then this is the time you should go and do it. Because if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. It's ironic because there's been so much stuff that has been mooted to come out on March 15th at the next budget. There is rumor that he's also going to announce an increase of the state pension age, which is another conversation completely. And ironically, if you've been paying attention to the news over the last 2 weeks, France have done the same thing. They had riots. Not to say we're going to have them here. I don't think we would have them here. I think we'll just take it on the chin. But I think this is definitely a moment where we can kind of take a step back and kind of take a snapshot of where we are. This is desperate measures. It is. The government needs to raise more taxes. Look at what they've done with capital gains tax, with the allowances there. Look at what they're doing with the dividends allowance. This is if we are unable to navigate this recession successfully, all of these allowances that we've been enjoying could all disappear in the next few years. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic or anything like that, but it's a very, very interesting time right now. I still think that we need to get back to the core issue at hand. We have been failed miserably when it comes to financial education. People are going to get found out in this recession. If you've leveraged yourself up on debt, buying cars that you can't really afford, getting the biggest house that you can't really afford for the aesthetic, you're going to get found out now. And it's unfortunate, and it's not something that I take any pride in highlighting, but it makes even more important the points that I try to make on this channel around being financially responsible and understanding the key principles that you need to have in place to ensure financial security for yourself. So important to stress this right now. It's not about looking rich, it's actually being rich. There's too much emphasis on the aesthetic of what image we portray. And I'm trying not to use bad language here, but it's BS. What other people think doesn't matter. What you want other people to feel about you does not matter. I can say that now because I have a little bit of experience, right? But I'm 43 years old, and I started this channel so that I can have conversations with people who are in their 20s that I wish someone had with me. And this is where we are. It's all going to come home to roost. And we can't do anything about it right now. But this is the one thing that we can do. We can learn. Because this kind of situation will roll around. We are going to have another recession at some point. It could be 5, 6 years, 10 years into the future. What are we going to learn now that will help us be in a better position when the next recession, the next economic stranglehold takes place? What are we going to learn now? What are we going to be able to put in place? And I'm going to shamelessly plug this, because when I was writing the book, these were all the things that were in the back of my mind. And I wrote the proposal for this back in Christmas 2021. And I didn't know how 2022 was going to pan out. But this book right here, the principles, the basic formula that I put together in this book right here, is everything that people need to take heed of to be able to put themselves in the best position for the next time this kind of stuff happens. It is available now on pre-order on Amazon. It's also going to be an audio book as well. It is a shameless plug, but this is the stuff that we did not get taught in school. This is the stuff that has allowed me to be in a position where I can say that I'm financially secure. I have a little bit of financial freedom. I don't have any debts. I've got a small mortgage. That's it. I don't owe anybody any money. I have enough income to be able to flex and to be able to be okay. But it took a journey for me to get here. And it's going to take a journey for you to get there as well if you're not already in that place. But it is all about control. It is all about the decision to actually have a look at it pragmatically. I know how scary and how daunting it can be to approach a topic that you don't fully understand. I would not know any of this if I didn't have my career in financial services. And in the book, I talk about this as well. I wouldn't know any of this stuff. I feel blessed that I know this stuff to be able to share this on the channel and share this on the podcast. It's now in written form, but we have to pay attention to this right now. We have to start putting those building blocks in place, because if we don't, the next time this rolls around, we're going to find ourselves in the same position. And what good does that do anybody? I don't know whether they're going to do this or not. I think the Tories will have to have a lot of balls to do it. But if they do, there's nothing we are going to be able to do. It's going to be a tax grab to get the country, you would hope, in a better place. And people will have their thoughts on that, because at the end of the day, how could this thing get any worse? Famous last words. But anyway, I hope that you found this useful. If you did enjoy this, please smash the like button. There are about 19 likes on here at the moment. Let me just get in the comment section very quickly, because I know that there are some comments in here. Pull some of these out as well, and maybe respond to a couple of things on here. And if you do know anyone who might benefit from this as well, please do share. Just when you think things can't get any worse. I will do a video talking about the personal savings allowance, because Martin Lewis has done this thing on ISAs, and is it worthwhile having an ISA? And he's saying that interest rates aren't high enough for you to have used up your full personal savings allowance. With all due respect, he's a great guy. I respect what he does, but he's not a financial planner. So the angle that he takes when he talks about the personal savings allowance and ISAs, for me, is from a place of maybe a misunderstanding. Definitely not from a financial planning point of view. I'll do a separate live where we talk about that, and I explain and give you some examples on that specifically. Let me just have a look at this. What are we saying here? Is the 100K limit on individual ISA accounts? I have two. So basically, this will be blanket across all of your ISAs. If you had like 10 ISAs, the maximum you could have. So they're talking about a lifetime cap. So if you have 10 ISAs, the maximum you can have across those 10 ISAs will be £100,000, not just one account. So that will encapsulate a ton of other accounts. The other question that we don't yet know the answer to is this going to be contributions? So ISA contributions, or is this going to be contributions plus interest, returns, compounding, so on and so forth? I would assume it would remain the same as it is now, and it would be contributions, but we don't know. This is all stuff that will have to come out in the wash if they actually announce this on March 15. We don't yet know at this point in time, but it is a lifetime cap that we're hearing at this moment. I was just saying here as well, I read in the mail that the Bank of England is changing the tone on the economy. They got it wrong and adjust the forecast, which is better than predicted. I hope so, and I hope that the numbers actually get updated so we can actually see what the new forecast will be. Once those numbers are out, I will do a video on it, because it will be good to revise them against the forecast that we did on the channel like 3 weeks ago at the top of the year, to see how much it actually moves by. The hope is that with all these forecasts, because they are forecasts, that they are wrong, and they are painting a worst case scenario that we never actually get to, because it's going to be less painful for a lot of people. But the truth is, you just don't know. So we'll hopefully see. Um, let's have a look. I'm just going to scan these very quickly, guys. 1 second. Someone says here, no one pays attention to the Bentley driver, just the Bentley. Yep, very, very true. I would hope they would leave the ISIS alone, but there you go. I mean, the issue is, uh, do they? How does that impact? Then they probably won't make any changes to the mechanics of how they work with lifetime ISIS for first time buyers and people looking to put money into an ISA for retirement purposes. But you never know. The details might come up very, very differently. What's it saying here? Cool, and his money comes to mind. Then and again, you don't know what you don't know. That is very, very true. You don't know what you don't know until you know you don't know it. That's what I learned in Canary Wharf, and that has always been true. Okay, cool. I've got to the bottom of the comments on here. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, please do share. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe as well. That would be very, very helpful in helping me reach more people and amplify the voice. I will see you during the week. There's a lot going on next week. I'm so busy. I will provide you guys an update. I promise. It's just a lot right now, and I am finally feeling a little bit better compared to how I was feeling on Friday. Thank you, guys. Catch you soon.